Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel M Stewart Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to paint this Christmas landscape scene. I'm going to teach you how to mix realistic colours and tones so you can create a realistic landscape painting. I'm going to teach you how to use cools such as blues and purples for shadows and how to use warm tones such as oranges and yellows for heat so you can add highlights and shadows and you can create this great Christmas snowman acrylic painting. So let's get into it. So a really nice and easy tutorial today. You're going to need the following colours. They are titanium white, cad yellow, matte orange, rose pink, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, iris purple, burnt umber and matte black. So I've got a burnt sienna painted canvas and all I've done is I've used chalk to create an outline. So sorry if it's a bit scruffy, it's just because obviously all I've done is I've used chalk to create where I want things to be. So it's a bit hard to see. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some cobalt blue and I'm just going to block in where I want my snowman. Everything else I'm not going to block in because we're going to paint in quite light colours and I don't want to put a big dark shadow colour like this cobalt blue if we're going to use really nice pastel colours for things like the sunset and the tree line off in the distance. But these things, this little snowman, I'm going to have a little dad pulling his kid on a sled. That could be me and my daughter. We could have that just in the background here. And we're just going to have a tree line, but I'm not going to use any dark colours just to block in an outline, simply for the fact as we go along I'm going to teach you how to use light colours to create faraway trees and clouds. So if you'd like to just jot down a rough outline, feel free to, and away we go. So I'm going to get my titanium white and I'm just going to put in my sun, and all I'm going to do is just going to create a big circle, big blob of titanium white here, and what I'm going to try to do is create heat around it. So I'm going to use bright cad yellow, and don't worry, like always, if it's streaky or you get brush marks, all we're going to do for the time being is we're just going to block everything in. So don't worry if it's scruffy, we just want to get where everything should be in the painting. So we're just going to create where I want things like the sun and I want the heat, and then we'll add things like the clouds and everything like that. Now I was going to have a tree here on the right to bring it forward, but I think it would be a bit overwhelming. So I think, as I say, when you're using chalk, what's great about it is you can move things about on your painting, on your canvas, and it doesn't leave any horrible marks like a pencil or charcoal does. So just like I'm doing now, if you don't like something, you can just move it or you can just paint over it. So it's a great way to plan your paintings in advance if you want to figure out where you want things and perspective and things like that. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating a really nice bright heat source around my sun and my sky using some cad yellow. And I've got some Naples yellow here. So all you do to make Naples yellow, look, I'll show you. You get plenty of white, cad yellow, so plenty of white and lots of cad yellow, but more white than anything, and you add a dot of black just to suck a bit of the colour out, and it makes this nice creamy yellow that I've got here. Okay, and all we're going to do is just at the horizon, we're just going to make it a little bit lighter because obviously that's a bit further away from the sun. So all we're going to do is just make it a little bit lighter in colour. Still got plenty of yellow in it. So again, don't worry if it's scruffy. Don't worry if you're painting over anything. We're just trying to block everything in. Now a lot of this we're going to cover up with the tree line, but what we want to do is we just want to match everything in colour. So when we have gaps in between the trees, there's bits of that sky shining through. Right, so we're going to make some of this purple. So all we're going to do is take some iris purple, which is a very cool purple. So you can get that by mixing purple and cobalt blue. Add lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of white, and you should get that pastel purple that I've got in the top right corner. Now if you mix some of your created Naples yellow that you just made, that creamy yellow, to the mix, you should get an in-between colour. So it's not quite yellow and it's not quite purple, it's right in between. So all we're going to do, we're just going to use that colour just to go up in the sky. So this is all the background sky. If you imagine that the sky gets cooler away from the sun, so all we're doing, we're just trying to match that in colour. And then all we're going to do, we're just going to take pure purple and white and less yellow. So we're getting a little bit more purple as we go up. So as I say, don't worry about brush marks or any of the burnt sienna shining through. We'll go over it in a minute. And then we're just going to use purple and white now, right at the top. So the purple and white's a lot cooler. Obviously it's further away from that sunlight. So this is all for the background sky. So all we're doing, we're just blending it in. Trying to get all the lumps and blobs out of my paint. So there we go. So what it should do is for the background sky, we should have really nice bright sun, and then we should have the sky cooling. Now unfortunately with my one, because the burnt sienna is shining through, we're just going to go over the top of it and give it a second coat just to make it look a bit prettier. Because it's a bit streaky. That's the problem with acrylics. It's a bit streaky. So just just drying it with a hairdryer and just going over the top, you can take all those streaks out. So just taking your time, just use a hairdryer or just let it dry naturally for 20 minutes, and then you can just go over the top. So look, all I'm doing, I'm using cad yellow around the sun. And I'm using that lighter Naples yellow that we mixed, which was lots of white, lots of yellow, and a dot of black. So look, just by adding a second coat, look, you can see the difference. Everyone asks me, and I swear they fast forward it every week, why do you paint your canvas burnt sienna? Well, the reason is for this exact reason. I can see where I need to rework the painting, where it looks scruffy, where there's not enough paint, where there's horrible brush marks, etc, etc. So if I have a light colour and we're using pastel colours such as this Naples yellow, I won't notice it if I have a light canvas. So that's why I need a dark colour. And it also helps with the chalk. Having a dark colour helps with the chalk. So look, all we're doing, we're creating X shapes. We're just making it much more vibrant by just going over the top with our big brush. We're just creating those X shapes like usual. Just back and forth really lightly. There we go, nice and blended, easy peasy. So that's looking super duper. So we're just going to mix, so it's purple, lots and lots and lots of white, and a dot of black, and you can add some of the yellow to it, just so it's a mix between the purpley yellow colour, and we'll just go over the top. Don't worry if your brush is still got some of the yellow on it, it's fine. We're just going to mix it all together. So now we're going to get some of the purple and white, so plenty of purple and white, and we're just going to block in the very top of the painting just to frame it. So you want the darker colour right at the top of your painting, of your canvas. So what we're doing, we're just coming down with our big brush, and we're just going to blend the colours gently together. So what I'm doing, look, I'm just creating X shapes, and look, you can see a big gap. Look, that's why I painted burnt sienna. That's why I paint my canvas burnt sienna. So I can see big mistakes like that and where I need to go over the top and take all those horrible marks out and just make my transitions of my colours smoother. Smooth operator. So look at that. Look. So we've got this lovely little sun, and we're going to have this lovely glow, and we're going to have this nice sky, and we've created this lovely darkened corners. So we've got a nice framed sky now. So now we've got our sky, we're just going to put our sun back in with some titanium white. So just try to create a little circle if you can. And then what we're going to do, we're going to start making really nice pretty clouds. So we're going to take some of that rose pink and orange. So rose pink and orange, a little bit of yellow. And we're going to create a really nice warm colour. And we're going to add a tiny bit of that Naples yellow, so you can just add a little bit of white. So a little bit of white, just that creamy yellow that we made earlier. We should get this lovely pastel sort of reddy peach colour. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a smaller brush, really soft bristle brush. I'm just going to create some floating clouds just above our sun. Now the reason we're using warm colours is we're going to try to imply nice heat from the sunlight. So we're using yellows, oranges, pinks all around that hot sun. And then what we're going to do later, we're going to use blues and purples for all the things in the shade that are all nice and cool. So we're going to create a nice light effect by using really nice warm colours. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating sort of wispy shapes where I want little clouds to come past the sun. And then right on the horizon, as I say, we're going to paint over this a lot with our tree line. But you normally get sort of a light cloud that sort of sits right on the horizon. So all I'm going to do is just go right up to the horizon. I'm going to deliberately make my horizon a little bit wonky, because when you get snow, you get really wonky. And I'm going to just wipe off most of the paint on my brush, and I'm just going to smooth it into the previous yellow colour. So all I'm doing is I'm just using a dry brush, and I'm just gently going over the top, and I'm just making the edges of what I've just painted a little bit softer, a little bit more wispy and smoother. So it's a good easy technique, just get a dry brush with soft bristles and just go over the top of what you just painted. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit darker as we move up, but first we're just going to do some of the clouds with the heat above the sun. So we're going to just use that colour for the belly of this big cloud we're going to have. So this underbelly of the cloud is going to be getting all the heat from the sun. So we want it in this nice bright pinky peachy colour. So I'm just going to block in the belly of this big cloud. And now that's dry, and I'm just going over the top, just making it a little bit brighter. And we're just going to get darker as we move up into the sky. So we're going to have more pink and a little bit now of that cool iris purple. So we're getting more purpley. Still got plenty of orange in it. And a little bit of that creamy yellow we made just to soften it up, make it more pastel. So that's the great thing about making that creamy yellow. If you add it to colours, you can make your colours look a bit more pastel-y. So all it was yellow, plenty of white and a dot of black if you want to make Naples yellow. And then all we're going to do, these are all the clouds as they fade away from the sun. They're getting a little bit cooler and a little bit darker. So we're going to use that purpley colour just to imply that. So all we're doing, we're just gently blending it into the previous orangey colour. We're just having some darker clouds. So it's a really easy technique. Just blend the two tones while it's still wet. So I'm just merging them just so the transitions again look really natural. And then all I'm going to do, I'm going to start building up this big cloud here. I'm going to still leave lots of the pinky colour, lots of the peachy sort of colour underneath it, and that should, once we start blocking it in, look like the sunlight is coming from below it. So we're going to have some little ones floating off into the distance, why not? So there we go. Got some little ones just coming off it. But it should be starting to trick your eyes now. It's starting to, the sunset is starting to take effect. And then we're just going to get some more of the cool purple. And we're just going to mix some pink. So we want it really cool now. So we've just not got hardly anything apart from pink and purple. We're just going to put a little bit of that creamy yellow in, just to make it more pastel. But it's not got any orange in it. It's much cooler, so it's a much cooler tone. So think of what I've been trying to teach you. All the short shadows we want much more cooler, so we want to use more things like purples and blues. And what we're going to do, we're just going to go around the edge of our cloud and just give it a harsh shadow. So just go around the border. You can create little shapes and you can have little bits floating off it. So that's, as I say, you can go as detailed as you want to go. But these are all the parts of the cloud that aren't getting any sunlight, so they're a lot more cooler. And what it should do is, just by using colours, just create realism. So as I say, this tutorial is perfect for beginners and medium artists. It's a really easy one. As I say, you don't have to be an expert, you just need to see how the colours work. So we've got this lovely transition in our sky. We've got these lovely clouds. I'm really happy with that. So I'm just going to put a glow around my sun. So I'm going to mix some yellow and orange. Now orange is really overpowering. It's a really strong colour. So what you want to do is just have a tiny bit of orange and lots of cad yellow. So lots and lots of yellow and a tiny bit of orange, and you should get a really bright golden yellow. And all we're going to do is, just around the sun, we're just going to make the sunlight look like it's glowing and make all these clouds look like they're sort of fading off into the light. So now this area is dry, what you can do is just glaze over the top with this nice golden yellow. And then you can add a little bit more orange, because as I say, orange is really overpowering, and a tiny bit of pink, and you should get that really bright peach tone again. And you can just soften up all the transitions, so as it moves towards the sun, it just looks like it's fading into the sunlight. So all these tricks really good for any sunset. So say, once you start mastering how to do light and colours, you don't have to be really good at drawing and painting. You can use the colours to create the realism. So all I'm doing, I'm just using that bright yellow just to glaze over the top, just to make them look like they're glowing in the sunlight. Creating a little circle around it just to give it a glow. It's looking funky. It's looking really cool. Just put a little bit gaps in between some of the clouds. And then what the light does is it normally sort of glows on all the clouds underneath it. So I'm just going to apply that just on these clouds here. Just going to give it a little bit of a glow. And the same on these ones. So on the bum of this cloud, I'm just going to give it a nice glow. So all that sunlight is coming up. Put the sun back in, make it a bit more rounder. And then what we're going to do, we're going to get some of that creamy yellow, so cad yellow, tons of white, so plenty of white, more white than yellow. And then we're just around the sun, we're just going to poke some holes in the sky. We're just going to create a really bright glow and a really bright background sky, just so it looks like it's really luminous, really vibrant. And again, it just gives the viewer something to focus on. So we're just gently blending it in. got that really bright, vibrant cad yellow around it to give it that glow effect. So there we go. He's looking so cool. So just smoothing it into the previous colour. So the sky is always the hardest bit. I always say this with the tutorials. If you can nail the skies, everything else is pretty easy. It's trying to get the light right around your sun and the skies, because that's where the people are going to look at. And then once you've done that, everything else starts to come together. So there we go, super vibrant, super luminous. That looks awesome. Just get some cad yellow, just go around it. Just to make these clouds look really popping. Excellent. So a lot of it's just going back and forth till you get comfortable and you think, oh, that looks realistic. All my transitions look really natural. There's not a really huge jump from one colour to another. So that looks really, really cool. I'm really happy with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on all the light, but first we're going to put some pine trees in. So we're going to create a light effect with trees. So again, using the colours, we're going to swap to a little fan brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to make little mini Christmas trees. So what we're going to do is we're going to create pine trees. So think of a Christmas tree. And we're going to use colours again just to create the realism. So a great thing about a fan brush is they're really, really easy to paint Christmas trees. So we're going to get some orange and we're going to add a little bit of purple to it and a little bit of pink. So orange, pink and purple. We should get this nice little bit darker if we add a little bit yellow. So we're going to create this really nice warm peachy tone. And just around the sun, if you imagine all these trees are going to get the most sunlight. So just like the belly of the clouds, they're going to get the most heat. So all I've done is I've tipped this fan brush sideways. So it's going upwards. So it's really, really thin, but it's still got a spiky bristles. And I'm just dragging it up and I'm doing all different sized trees. So look, I'm doing some big, some small, but I'm leaving plenty of gaps. They're not all the same size, they're all different. So look at that. And what that's doing, there's no detail, it's the colour that makes it look like it's picking up all the sunlight. So what we're going to do, we're going to have the trees get bigger as they move towards the left hand side so we can create a bit of perspective just to make it look a bit more realistic. So what we're going to do, we're just going to add a little bit of yellow to that mix. So again, just like the clouds, these trees below the sun are going to get the most sunlight, the most heat. So the highlights are going to be the harshest and they're going to be really, really vibrant and bright. So what we're going to do to create that, we're just going to create all this yellowy orange and create a glow. So look at that. So it all matches the light of the sun. And you can smooth it with your finger like a professional like me. So all we're doing is we're creating that glow. We're trying to match everything. So just as the clouds get cooler as it moves towards the further away from the sun, we're going to do that with the colour. So we're going to add more purple to the mix. So can you see by adding purple, it creates this sort of nice sort of pastel browny sort of colour. It's very earthy. So we're going to do the same technique. We're just creating pine trees. So my hand gets out of the way. We're just going to get slightly bigger as they come towards the left hand side. So I'm just going up and just creating the shapes of pine trees. And then we're going to have more purple. So we're getting cooler as we move to the left. So if anyone watched the tutorial we did the other day with the light effect on the trees, very similar thing. We're using colours just to create the effect. So what you can do is you can tip your brush diagonally and start creating sort of the branches and all the sort of bristles and pine needles that come off it. So by just going diagonally or straight across, you can just start creating the shapes of Christmas trees. So all I'm doing, I'm just dragging my brush diagonally. I'm just starting to create some bristles and some texture, because as they're coming towards the viewer, they're just going to look a bit more realistic. So look, watch. If you just draw a line, so just draw a straight line. So go all the way down. My hand gets out the way. So there we go. You just draw a straight line. Get your brush. So once we've done all the lines for the trunks, and if you get your fan brush, all the bristles are really, really brilliant for trees. So try to have little bristles at the very top and come out like a triangle. So come out a bit longer as you go downwards each time. So if you imagine a triangle, it's longer at the base and it gets to a tip at the top, if that makes any sense. You want to get wider, look, at the base of the tree than you do at the top. So by just using this brush, what's great about this brush, so look, it's not as wide as I get towards the top. So wide at the bottom, and just leave gaps, and using this spiky bristle brush called a fan brush, you can create the illusion of pines. It's really cool, isn't it? Really easy. Look at that. Bob Ross Starly. So all I'm doing, I'm just using the purple, the cool iris purple. So now we're further away from the sun. Just got less orange in the colour, more purple. Doing the same technique. Just leaving gaps, just creating those bristles. So look, it gets smaller as it goes towards the top. It gets wider as it goes towards the bottom. To create sort of a triangle sort of effect. Easy peasy, look at that. We'll put some bushes, why not? Let's create some texture. So we're going to create some bushes and stuff here in the foreground. So we're just trying to build up the illusion of texture just by using the colours. And what it should be doing now is it should look like all those pine trees under the sun look farther away and they're all glistening in the sunlight, and all these ones that are coming towards you are getting cooler and larger. So it should create the perspective. There we go. So we've got these nice cool colours to the left, and we've got these nice warm colours to the right. So what we're going to do, we're just going to merge the two. So I'm just going to get orange and purple. So orange and purple, mix the two together. A little bit of pink, just so there's not such a jump between orange and purple. There we go. And I'm just going to put some texture on these ones here, just to give them some bumps, just again to create as they come closer. You don't have to do this on the really far away ones, because obviously they're so far away they won't look detailed anyway. But again, it's just to create the illusion of detail as they come towards the viewer. So just by going across, use that fan brush, just create little bristles, little pine needles. So there we go, easy peasy. And the transition should look pretty realistic. And what you can do if you want to is you can just get a thin brush, sort of a fine liner, and you can just create sort of the tops of these pine trees coming out just to make them look a bit more sticking out. So you can add a couple. There we go. So just use a really thin brush. Oops, gone a bit wonky there. And smeared it, never mind. Let's just make it longer, never mind, no one will notice. So all I'm doing, I'm just using a really fine liner. I'm just drawing kind of straight lines when I can. Just so they have different heights. Again, it's just a little bit added detail. We're not going to go too detailed because, as I say, I want to make it nice and easy. Now if you want, you can, if you've gone a bit heavy-handed like me with some of the pine needles, you can just mix a little bit of your background sky. So all it was yellow and a tiny bit of purple, and you can just poke some holes in if you want to. It's totally up to you, you don't have to. But if you want to have some of the sunlight shining through, just mix some of that creamy white or some of that yellowy purple, and you can just poke holes back in just so it looks like the sky is shining through between the pine trees. Totally up to you if you want to do this or not. So again, it's just an easy trick, and then when you zoom out, look at that. So we've got this lovely light effect, and we've got this lovely pine trees building up. So what we want to do is we want to bring everything closer to the viewer, and we want to start bringing our snow and our snowman and our people all towards the viewer. So we're going to mix some cad yellow, some white and some orange. So we're using that creamy Naples yellow that we've made and some orange to create a really nice bright yellowy orange here. And all we're going to do, just like we did with the sky, we're just going to block it in first, just to sort of test where the colours are all right and where we want things to be. But ideally what we want is we want to match the sort of heat from the sun on the ground. So don't worry if you paint over your guys, we can paint them back in. And don't worry again if you get all streak marks and stuff while you're putting over the burnt sienna, that's quite normal. We'll go over all this and make it look more pretty in a minute. It's just to match the colours first, it's just to see if all the colours match. So this is all the snow, if you think, that's getting all that radiant sunlight. So that's why it's really warm in colour. So look at that, it's starting to match. And then as it comes towards the viewer, just like the sky, it's going to get cooler. So we're going to use some of that purpley white, and we're going to mix a tiny bit of that orange colour we just made. And we're just going to get cooler as we fade off into the distance. So if you imagine you be standing here at the edge of the painting, looking outwards towards the sun. So you would be quite in the shade, looking towards that brilliant sun. So just go around your little snowman. There we go. Now we're going to make some of this cool blue that I've taught you in multiple tutorials how to make, which is cerulean blue, cobalt blue and lots of white. So cerulean blue is more turquoise and cobalt blue is more royal blue, a bit cooler. If you combine the two and add lots and lots of white, you get this really nice cool blue that I've got here pre-mixed. So just keep adding cobalt blue and cerulean blue together and plenty of white, and you should get this colour here. And it's fantastic for creating cool areas of a painting. So for things like shadows or areas that aren't getting much sunlight. So it's a really good one for snow. So if you're ever painting snow, it's not always jet white. You get areas that are in the shade, and this blue is fantastic for creating that shade effect. So all we're doing the X shapes with our brushes again, and I'm just trying to frame the painting by making the corners dark, and I'm just blending it into that previous tone. So you look just like before, you can see all the horrible brush marks because of the burnt sienna. So all I'm going to do is just go over the top. Now unfortunately my mixture dried, and when I tried to match it, it was a little bit too light. So I'm just going to let my brush run out. My paint run out, sorry, of my brush. And I'm just going to remix it quickly. So it was orange and yellow and plenty of white. So again, look, we're just taking all those horrible brush marks out, all those streaks, so we can't see any of the canvas. So can you see now why I didn't want to, at the beginning, do cobalt blue for an outline for things like the pine trees, because that lovely light effect that we were going to paint in really pastel tones. So we want to keep it really pastel. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just creating X shapes with my brush. I'm just letting the paint glide off it, hardly any pressure, and I'm just going over the top and just making everything look more vibrant and smoother. So look, X shapes. Just let the paint run out. There we go. Hardly any pressure as I get towards the bottom. So I've got hardly any water on my brush. Just enough that it's moist, but it literally just glides. Because the problem with the water sometimes with acrylics is that's why you get so much streaks. So ease up on the water, have less water, just have a moist brush, and you'll find it's much easier. Now we're going to get some of that cool blue, and all I'm going to do is just going to mix the two tones together. So look, just doing the X-shaped trick. Back and forth, letting the brush do all the work, letting the paint run out. So there we go, we've got this nice transition. So we've got all this heat coming from this sun, and then we've got all this cool area in the shade, and we're going to have the guys in the background. But first we're going to work on our snowman. So I thought I would zoom in for you and show you a really easy way to paint a snowman. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our cool blue that we just made. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and lots of white. And on the left hand side, we're going to create one big circle and one little circle for his head. So the big one for his body and the little one for his head. And again, don't worry if it's streaky and you can see the underpainting. We'll go over it in a minute. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the orange that we mixed. So orange, yellow and white. And we're going to paint the other side. So think of yin and yang. Think of one side is hot and really bright, and one side is in the shade, and that's why it's really cool, and that's why we're using the blues and the purples. So one side's getting all that sunlight and the other side isn't. So if you leave it to dry and just reapply your paint, if you've got any streaks like me, so lovely cool blue on one side. So this side's getting hardly any sunlight, and then the other side is getting plenty of sunlight. So that's why, same trick, big circle and a little circle, and just blend the two tones gently together. So I've got hardly any paint on my brush. I'm just mixing the two tones while they're wet together down the middle, and we should have one side that looks really cool and one side that looks really bright. And we're going to get some yellow, just add a tiny bit of yellow and white, and we're just going to put a little edge just on the right hand side just to emphasize the sunlight. And again, just where it's wet, just going to merge it. So look at that. So we've got this lovely glow now on the right hand side. Just going to make it a little bit neater, just with some orange and yellow, just the previous colour. just again so the transition looks really, really smooth, that you hardly notice it. And you've got one side hot and one side cold. You're hot and you're cold. So look, we're going to get some black and cobalt blue. So black and cobalt blue. And we're going to put in his eyes. So I guess these are stones or coals. So again, just swap into a smaller brush. Put in some eyes, and then we're just going to create some stones for a mouth. So there we go. And then you can have some buttons on his belly. So you can have some little buttons. And then he can be a happy little chubby snowman. So let's have him with a little hat and a scarf, I think. That'd be cool. So let's get some brown and add that to the blue and the black. So we're adding a little bit of burnt umber. And I'm just going to draw like a little top hat. So think of, say, like a little magician's hat. I'm just going to put like Pharrell's hat. I'm just going to put that on the top. So a little square bit here at the top. Just block that in. There we go. And I'm going to use the same dark shadow colour just to give him a scarf. Why not? So a little scarf. So you can have the bits, the little knot here, and little tassels coming off it. So 1 and 2, there we go. And I'm just going to get some orange, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit of the burnt umber to the orange. And this could be a carrot, or I don't know, a carrot or a satsuma or something, an orange for his nose. I'm just going to put a little bit across his, just really subtle across his hat. And again, just on the scarf, just for the heat of the sun, just a tiny bit, just so it looks like it's getting a bit of sunlight. And then just with a really fine brush, just going to take some black and brown, and I'm just going to draw some twigs for his arms. So just do one big line, and then just do 2 little diagonal lines at the end for his hands. So 1, 2, and it looks like his little hands, his little stick hands. So look at that. And because he's blue on one side and he's orange on the other side, what it does is it makes him look 3D, and it makes it look really realistic. The sunlight is all matching and one side is in the shadow. And all it was, as I say, there's no detail whatsoever. Perfect for beginners. It's just the colours that trick your eye. So I'm just going to get some cobalt blue and purple. I'm just going to make a really cool colour. I'm going to add a dot of black to it. Oh, I think a bit too much black into it. Let's put a little bit of brown into it, why not? And I'm just going to bring these a little bit forward. So dark tones bring things towards the viewer. So you don't want to make things too black, because it will bring it real towards the viewer. So all I'm doing, I've still got plenty of blue and purple in that mix. I'm just making some of this sort of shrubbery and foreground come a bit closer towards the viewer. So if you want to darken areas up by using darker colours, they'll bring them closer to the viewer. And if you want to lighten things up by just using more pastel colours, you can push them back into the distance. So that looks a bit too dark. So what I'm going to do, I think I put too much black in the mix. So not to worry, I'm just going to put some pink and purple back into the mix. A little bit of cobalt blue. I'm just going to make a nice shadow colour that's not as harsh, it's more pastel. So look, if you ever go a bit too dark and your trees look a bit too near to the viewer, you can always just go over the top with some purple. Look, just glaze over what you've just painted. And what it should do is push it right back again. Because we want to keep our darks for things like the snowman to bring him really close into the foreground. So we don't want to have our really blacks and things in the background because it brings it forward. So all I'm doing, I'm just going over the top with some of that nice dark purple and cobalt blue. I'm just glazing over what I just did, just so it's not as harsh. Pushes it back again. So there we go. So I'm going to draw a silhouette of a dad. You can do a mum if you want to. You can do anyone. Just pulling a little kid on a sled or a sleigh. So I'm just drawing a guy sort of walking along and pulling his kid on a sleigh. So all I've done is I've mixed some orange and purple, more purple than anything, and it creates this nice sort of silhouette browny sort of colour. Again, I don't want to use black because black will bring it forward, so I want to keep it pushed back. So again, this doesn't have to be super detailed, it's just a rough outline of a little kid on a sleigh and someone pulling them along. So last year when it snowed here in London, it was really, really good. Me, my wife and my little girl would take our dog and we'd go on the sleighs and we'd go down hills and I would take photos. So this little painting is inspired by my memories of last year. And hopefully it might snow this year. See, I like snow. I'm originally from Scotland, but my wife is from Spain and she hates the cold. So again, yin and yang. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just creating some footprints, some little tracks. So just orange and purple mixed together, just to create the illusion again of some detail. Just when the sleigh gets pulled through the snow, it creates all the sort of wash, doesn't it? The sort of marks. Now what you can do is you can add a little bit more orange on the right hand side to give him a little bit of a glow from the sun. And you can use some of the cool purple on the left hand side. So again, by using one side as orange and then the middle as the purple and then the left hand side as the black, or not black, the dark tone, we can have a nice transition. So just like we did with the snowman, by using sort of cool colours for the shade, such as blues and purples, and warm colours such as orange, you can add highlights and cool tones. So again, it's really, really subtle. So you can just have more orange on the right hand side and more purple on the left hand side. So I'm going to mix some of that cool colour we had earlier, and I'm going to add a little bit of purple to it. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, white. I'm going to add a little bit of purple to it, just so it's a tad darker. You can either use purple or you could use cobalt blue. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of a shadow around our little chubby snowman. And the reason I'm putting a little bit of a shadow there is because I want to sign it in that corner. So I just want a darker colour, just so my signature stands out. It's a little trick. So I'm just, again, to frame the painting, I just want a little bit of a darker colour in the left hand corner because I'm going to put my lovely signature there. And then all I'm going to do is use the lighter tone just to put back some of the detail. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to get some bright yellow, add a tiny bit of orange to the mix, and lots of white. More yellow than orange, so really nice yellowy orange colour. And we're just going to put some highlights now just to finish the painting off. So we're just going to leave gaps in the underpainting. What we're trying to do is just try to create the texture in the snow that's getting all the sunlight. So when you obviously step in snow, you create footprints and you have bobbles because it's all uneven. So what we're trying to do is just create that with yellow and orange and white. So again, just having a lighter colour, leave gaps in the underpainting to create the illusion of texture. This is all the sunlight coming down. And again, it just gives the viewer something to focus down the middle towards that sun. So what I tend to do is I use a dry brush. I've got hardly any paint. So anyone who's watched the tutorials when we paint sunbeams, same technique. What we're doing, we've got hardly any paint. We've got this sort of chalky little amount of paint on a dry brush, and we're just rubbing it into the canvas, just creating the illusion of sunlight. Now we get some of that cool blue that we made earlier, so cerulean blue, cobalt blue, lots of white, and I'm going to add a little bit of the purple and white to it, and I'm just going to do the same technique. So I'm just going to have some cool sort of highlights now, just in areas, just to look like the snow that's a bit more in the shade here. So again, same technique. Just creating shapes and divots. So when you're happy with that, if you get some cad yellow and a little bit of white, and we're going to create a really harsh reflection now of the sun on the wet snow. So it's going to be sort of a shimmer, again, just to have a focal point for the viewer at home to look down the middle. So that looks really, really cool. Now I was going to have some stones and some bits and bobs here. You don't have to paint this bit. So if you're watching along at home, don't just paint this bit. Just wait, because I was going to have some stones and bits and bobs. I was even thinking of having a tree here in the foreground, but I think it would just be a bit overwhelming and a bit rubbish. So I was going to have a little bits of stones and terrain and add quite a lot of detail, but for a beginner's tutorial I think it would be a bit harsh. So I rubbed it out with a baby wipe. So again, you don't have to paint along that. And the great thing about acrylics, look, you can just put in what you had. I've got a few little divots and stones. All I did was use black and a fine liner and just put some dots in. So if you want to, you can put some stones in your snow. Why not? There could be bits of shrubs or trees that are sticking through the snow. So I'm just going to get some white, and I'm just going to put back in my sun, and I'm just going to put again just some white below it, just to make that reflection look really vibrant. And then just reapply some cad yellow around it. Again, sometimes with acrylics you've just got to do the highlights twice just to make them look really vibrant and make them pop. So just going over the top, you can just make them stand out a little bit more. So we've got this really nice shimmer on the wet snow now. Now, just to finish off the painting, we're just going to put some fine details. So all I'm doing is I'm using a fine liner. I've got some black and blue on the left hand side just to outline the silhouette on the left, because that's going to be really in the shade. And it's just to emphasize sort of the tracks in the snow, and as I say, where the sleigh's cutting through the snow, it just leaves all the sort of bobbles, doesn't it? So just taking your time and just adding all these little finishing details, they make the painting all come to life. All painting it all comes together right at the end, so it's having the faith to stick with it to the very end. So what I'm doing here, I'm just getting some cad yellow on my fan brush, and I'm just putting some glow on these far off pine trees just to emphasize the sunlight. So just off camera, I'm just mixing some orange and yellow together, and I'm just going to do the same technique. So again, just really easy. Just try to blend the two colours, so the orange and yellow with the cad yellow, and try to get your transitions really smooth. So now we've got a nice transition just going over the top with cad yellow. It should look like that sunlight is beaming down onto those faraway trees. Now if you want, you can go more detailed on your clouds. You can use things like the dark purple. You can use things like the peachy tone that we made at the beginning to add little floater clouds to add more detail. It's up to you how detailed you want to go. So even though I'm doing a beginner's tutorial, I can't help myself. Even though it's out of my imagination, I always have to add more and more and more. So I'm just going to get some of the Naples yellow that we made, which was white, cad yellow and a dot of black. And just around the sun, now it's all dry, I'm just going to make it a little bit brighter. It's got plenty of white in the mix. And just now we've done those pine trees below the sun, I'm just going to make it a little bit more whiter, just so it stands out. And I'm just going to add a little bit more cad yellow and orange to the mix. A little bit more cad yellow. And all we're going to do, my brush is really dry. I've got barely any paint. I'm just going to glaze over the top. So now we've got our guy here, our dude. We're just going to go around him and put a little bit more highlight. So this is all the sunlight going up to those snowy banks on the left hand side. So again, I leave little gaps in the underpainting to create the texture effect. So just rubbing it with my finger just to make it look all smooth. So these could be some banks going up here towards the trees. So again, it's just to create the illusion of texture. And then just to finish him off, I'm going to get some yellow and white, so more white than yellow, and create a really luminous outline. So if you think the sun is beaming on him, it's going to create a really sharp outline just on his right hand side. And while I've got that colour, I'm just going to do the same with my snowman. So all it is lots and lots of white and a dot of cad yellow. And I'm just using a fine liner, just creating a really bright highlight. So I'm going to use some of the cobalt and cerulean blue that we made earlier with the white, and I'm just going to do the same trick that we just did with the highlights. I'm just going to do it with the cooler colours. So on the right here, I'm just going to make the snow a bit cooler, just so it looks like it's fading off into the distance. It just frames my painting. So the same technique, just using the cool blue just to darken up our corners, and we're going to do the same on the right hand side. So barely any paint, just that cool blue that we mixed, and we're just going to add the illusion of texture. So just trying to blend the transition with the cool blue, just so it all matches. And when you're happy with it, and it all blends together, I think she's finished. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So you've learned how to paint a sunset, how to paint a sunset clouds. You've learned how to do a shimmer on your snow, how to paint a silhouette. You've learned how to paint a snowman. You've learned how to paint pine trees with a light effect. We've got all this lovely background sky. And it's just a really lovely Christmas landscape. So here's me and my daughter. So say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
So there you have it, guys, a lovely Christmas acrylic landscape painting tutorial. I've really enjoyed painting along with you guys at home. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We have plenty of landscape paintings here on my channel. My name is Murray. Look after yourself and your families, everyone, and I wish you a happy holidays. See you soon, guys. Take care. Bye.